Welcome to the world of the spectacular Spider-Man. Join us as we swing into this reimagined plot regarding a hero that has already spun a web in captivating our hearts. We've got 2 action-packed seasons to cover, so there's no time to waste. Here we go. Alright, let's introduce some familiar faces that we'll be interacting with during the show. For starters, we of course have Peter, who, as you may have guessed, is the boy behind the mask. He's Spider-Man, plain and simple. We also have Aunt May, Peter's beloved aunt and caretaker after pretty much everyone else in his family dies. Peter also has some besties, which include Harry, the son of Norman, a businessman and a swindler, who also dabbles in being the Green Goblin. Peter's other friend, Gwen, is the main girl, in which he gets in a serious relationship with. Unlike a lot of other Spider-Man renditions, Peter actually has 3 potential love interests in the Spectacular Spider-Man. This includes the aforementioned, but also another girl named Liz for a short amount of time, and of course he has a brief fling, if you can even call it that, with the other iconic girl Peter is commonly paired with, MJ. So essentially, Peter is big pimpin' in this edition. Some formidable foes we end up battling are Electro, a man who gets engulfed by electric eels and ends up being able to control electricity to some extent. Bent on revenge, he isn't an easy villain to subdue. We also battle the Big Man, who essentially acts as a mob boss of the city. Of course, we also encounter the Green Goblin, a much-known enemy of Spider-Man. Last, but certainly not least, we have Venom, an alien life form that takes over its host and commonly makes them hell-bent and angry, wanting even more power. And with that, we're swung into the first episode in the series, Survival of the Fittest. It begins with us getting a good look at Spider-Man's kicking abilities, presumably already practicing and honing in on his superhuman capabilities. The show then cuts to an upset Aunt May, struggling with the knowledge that her husband who passed away has left her and Peter with an unfortunate amount of debt. She doesn't try to bother Peter with these trivial things, however, he overhears her worrying about it anyway. The show then cuts yet again to Dr. Octavius, who will soon be known as the notorious Dr. Octopus, who is struggling with his work. Basically, a scientist made a cool invention, however Oscorp denied it, and Dr. Octavius was the one who set up the meeting between him and Norman, the leader of Oscorp and Harry's father. After his meeting, they denied his invention, and a month later came out with the same exact thing and didn't give him any credit, claiming that he's no proof that he came up with it in the first place.
Good news. I don't blame you anymore.
Meanwhile, at school, we're introduced to Peter's friends Gwen and Harry, and also the dude he's beefing with, Flash Thompson, who's insecure and upset that his girlfriend Liz might be interested in Peter.
Hey, Rand, Puny Parker's hitting on your girl.
Rand, I didn't know you two were...
School.
Cool? You don't care?
Behind the scenes, a crime boss, Big Man, is shocked to learn that Spider-Man is actually real, being the person who's in charge of the crooks that he defeated earlier in the episode. He orders his goons to squash him, setting Spider-Man up for more conflict later in the episode, and let's be honest, life in general. Back with Parker, he's hanging out with Harry at Harry's penthouse, where he's emphasizing he wants to intern with Dr. Connors, aka the Lizard, in order to become a scientist and make as much money as Harry's father. Norman, Harry's father, is then revealed, showing a certain level of disdain for Harry, as he wasn't accepted into such internships like Peter was. They're about to leave in order to avoid the awkward situation when all of a sudden, Dr. Toombs from earlier in the episode swoops in and grabs Norman from the balcony while dressed in a vulture outfit.
Something you know all about. You will announce to the world that Adrian Toombs is the genius behind TechFlight.
Peter changes into Spider-Man during the chaos and ends up saving Norman after he's thrown to the ground. Peter then eventually makes it to his internship with Dr. Connors, although being late and having to lie to Harry, saying that he got lost in the chaos. While there, he and Gwen run into Brock, who's one of their old friends that just so happens to also work for Dr. Connors. While there, we're shown Dr. Connors injecting himself with a strange serum. And Peter ends up finding out that since he's still in high school and has absolutely no experience, he will not be getting paid for his internship work, leaving him feeling defeated and distraught. Given the fact that he's still not able to help with the debt, Peter gets the idea to offer his services capturing better photos of Spider-Man in order to make a quick buck. However, he's turned down.
Robbie, where's my layout? Boswell, I ordered that rewrite 12 seconds ago. Lee, I'm not paying you to sit on your keister. And you!
Later that evening, Peter changes back into Spider-Man and heads to Norman's penthouse again to retrieve his shoes, only to see the Vulture still trying to capture Norman. While distracted, the Enforcers, aka the goons that the Big Man put to task killing Spider-Man, attempt to capture him.
Ox, Fancy Dan, you're up.
In the end, Spider-Man is able to reprimand them all, except for one enforcer, for the police to arrest, and, he gets his shoes back. We're introduced to an iconic Spider-Man villain in this episode titled Electro. It begins with a shot of how Electro came to be. An innocent worker in Dr. Connor's lab turned electric after a freak accident causing his body to be entirely conducted with electricity.
I stand corrected. We're forcing Max here to upgrade.
All I'm saying.
Growing angrier and angrier, Electro runs away from the lab as his life is falling apart, and he's frustrated with his certain state. Extremely valid considering his given circumstances.
You have to give yourself time to adjust.
Adjust to what? This?
Not only that, but he ends up getting in a debacle with Spider-Man himself after a minor cafe meltdown. Also, side note, a new romantic interest is brewing between Liz and Peter this entire time. Just look at that Riz. Ah, yeah. I too would have swooned by a romantic chat while holding live eels.
Guy knows his stuff. Probably a Nobel Prize in his future.
While at the lab, Electro shows up demanding that he be cured. But instead of listening to Dr. Connor's plea of someday being able to cure him, a fight ensues, eventually resulting in Spider-Man's victory.
Electro. Yeah. I'm Electro!
Episode 4, Market Forces, begins with us catching up with the Enforcer that escaped back in Episode 1. He's given a special suit and is tasked with killing Spidey by the big man. Later in the episode, Peter uses the Spider-Man suit to go over to Harry's, avoiding Aunt May's propositions of setting him up for the school dance. However, little does Peter know that the Enforcers are watching him with a close eye.
An Evite to Midtown High's fall formal.
Which would rock if either of us had, what's the word? Date?
Once there, he gets a call from the Daily Bugle, finally asking him if they can work with him and buy the photos of Spider-Man that he has. Once he leaves the Daily Bugle, tasked with getting photos pronto as his boss doesn't really like him. He gets attacked by the Enforcer that got away, who now goes by the name Shocker.
2 hours till deadline? No sweat.
After a brief battle, Shocker believes Spider-Man to be dead and leaves him be. Meanwhile, he's just caught up in a bunch of dumpster trash, and in fact, is not dead at all. During his encounter, his check that he received for his photos gets absolutely demolished, frustrating him even further. Eventually, the big man finds out that Spider-Man isn't dead, and he's disappointed in Shocker for not following through on his plans.
Something smells bad.
Oh, still? I washed this costume 5 times.
Eventually, they fight again, with Spider-Man winning this time, and being able to walk away from the fight. During the fight, he was able to secure some great Spider-Man photos, by the way. The episode ends with us finding out that Norman was the one behind the schemes involving the new suit, that he's been offered by Big Man to continue giving them new supervillain suits in return for money. In the end, we learn of the threat behind the threat. But on the bright side, Peter was able to get a new check for Aunt May, and they've made an agreement between themselves to have Peter keep 10% of each check in order for him to buy a new camera. Another formidable foe appears in the episode titled Competition. It begins with Spider-Man fighting off some bad guys, one of them named Marco. Later in the episode, it's seen that Marco has been taken by Hammerhead, one of the Enforcers, to the lab where they have Dr. Octavius conducting experiments, injecting him with different substances and turning him into Sandman. Oh, and Norman is there to watch, revealing just how involved he is in all the crimes going on around town. Eventually, Spider-Man and Sandman meet, and let's just say it isn't the most cordial of introductions. Meanwhile, Gwen tries to make it obvious to Peter that she likes him, which doesn't work out very well. Peter is a boy, he can't take a hint. After escaping the first time, however, Spider-Man makes sure to make Sandman a little less sandy, and encases him in cement so that he can't slither away.
How come you aren't hanging with your new friends?
'Cause I like my old friends.
The episode ends with Harry being angsty, however, making the football team, and Gwen and Peter getting ice cream together. Reaction begins with us getting a peek at Harry finding goblin green mysterious liquid in his locker and chugging it. Okay, this causes him to have a sort of drug-like attachment to it. Dr. Octavius finally stands up for himself in the slightest when he confronts Norman for putting multiple people in danger during their experiments as of late. Norman ignores this, however, and shuts him down, to which he submits basically with his tail between his legs.
Don't make me get rid of...
Octavius, are you in there?
Yes. I'm sorry.
However, later in the episode, he's transformed into a cybernetic hybrid when Green Goblin sneaks into the lab, trapping him in radiation, causing the long mechanical arms he has on to mold to his skin. When he awakens, he attacks Norman, who was the one to turn off the generator. Spider-Man shows up and intervenes, but Dr. Octopus, we will call him Doc Ock from now on, brushes them both off and runs away. Later, People runs into Doc Ock again, after witnessing Harry showing off his newfound strength to the football team and their jockeys. Oh, and showing off in front of Liz.
It isn't that. Hi, Gwen. Mind if I borrow Petey?
Don't worry, Gwen. Harry's fine.
Spider-Man chases Dr. Ock to a lab, where he's attempting to steal a power pack, and realizing that he's being chased, decides to grab Liz and threatens Spider-Man that he's going to have to choose between her or the power pack. While Spider-Man chooses Liz, he in the end is able to secure both, successfully preventing Doc Ock from gaining the power he so prized. The episode ends with Liz breaking up with her boyfriend after he, yet again, gets upset with her hanging around Peter. Meanwhile, Gwen approaches Peter, and the two agree to talk to Harry as they haven't been oblivious to his newfound strange behavior and the cold shoulder that he's been giving them.
I'm talking about the Green Goblin.
The next episode begins with the Green Goblin causing mayhem in the city and capturing Hammerhead, demanding that he be the one of his followers as he will soon rule the city. However, Hammerhead refuses, saying he only follows people he can respect, to which the Goblin responds by putting a knife to his throat. Later at their high school, Gwen attempts to tell Harry that she's worried about him, that the weird green liquid he keeps drinking seems not to be doing him any good, to which he responds that it's the whole reason he's been doing good in football and has a high GPA. Harry is then shown being more aggressive than normal, shoving Gwen and storming past Peter as the two look on worriedly.
What's that, Harry?
Nothing. A new soda.
Then you won't mind giving me a sip.
No!
Back with the Goblin, a ransom phone call is made, and Tombstone, aka Big Man, has no choice but to follow the Goblin's orders, meaning he's forced to meet him alone and will probably die. While flying away, Spider-Man sees Goblin, and a quick tussle ensues. However, Spider-Man isn't successful, and is left to recover from his failure alone.
Been looking for you.
Later in the episode, the Green Goblin is seen stealing from his father's lab, Oscorp, yet again, shooting off into the air. Meanwhile, at the fair, Harry and Gwen are confused as to where Harry's at, as he said he would meet them at the fair, when all of a sudden, large jack-o'-lantern fireworks are set off in the distance. While nobody knows what it means, Peter knows it's the Green Goblin, and he decides to follow the track. Once there, it's revealed that the Goblin has convinced not only Peter, but the Big Man to come out as well. Because the Green Goblin is against them both, the two decide to work together in order to escape.
This is so embarrassing.
And disappointing. Did you really think you needed a jump drive to protect you?
Spider-Man ends up following the Green Goblin back to none other than Harry's apartment. When he finally takes off his mask, it's revealed that the Green Goblin is Harry. Shocker. I know. Spider-Man and Norman are both shocked, and Norman is hurt that his son was stealing from his own company. However, he's also distraught because the actions of the Green Goblin were subconsciously about his hatred for his father. His father explains to Spider-Man that he was stealing his Green Goblin mixture and seemingly drinking it, causing side effects and a weird experiment, in a way as he wasn't finished with the serum. Spider-Man agrees not to turn in Harry, as it's not really his fault, and also he's his best friend.
Why would you do something so dangerous? So stupid!
For you!
Later, we're told that MJ will now be going to Peter's school. She's a friend that they've been hanging out with for a bit that Peter met at his job at the Daily Bugle. Romance, perhaps? The episode ends with us seeing a sneak peek of Venom when a strange dark matter is found on a spaceship that just landed home after being struck by a meteor. This show doesn't pull punches when it comes to getting as many great villains in at once. Episode 10, Persona, is an intriguing one to say the least. It begins with Spider-Man attempting to catch a robber that just so happens to be going after the black gunk that was found from space in the last episode.
Easy, cat lady. I don't want to fight.
Name's Black Cat, and cats don't fight spiders.
During his fight with the girl, however, the black gunk is seen seeping into Spider-Man's foot just before Dr. Connors arrives seeing the two. After she departs, Spider-Man and Dr. Connors are left to wonder if she had taken the black goo since there was no trace of it to be seen. The next day at work, Peter realizes that when Dr. Connors shows up, he lied about the robbery and told the Daily Bugle he didn't find out about the robbery until the next day. Meanwhile, the audience is shown that the Dr. Connors that Peter saw at the robbery was actually none other than the infamous villain, the Chameleon, who apparently was paid by a different group to capture the goo as well.
Of course. Your down payment will be refunded. Goodbye.
Meanwhile, Peter soon realizes that his entire Spider-Man outfit has turned pitch black. However, he seems to think that the ooze only attached itself to his suit, not to him. Later in the episode, it's shown that the Spider-Man with the real outfit has robbed a bank. Peter catches wind of this and immediately goes to try and figure out what's really going on. The audience is then secretly shown that the fraud is actually Chameleon himself. Once pretending to be Spider-Man, the real Spider-Man arrives and sets the record straight.
Retraction? Listen, webhead, nobody tells J. Jonah—
See? Even the Jolly One himself knows I'm the genuine article.
And after a boat chase, finally reprimands the Chameleon. The episode ends with Black Cat, the girl who had been trying to steal the black goo earlier in the episode, kissing Spider-Man upside down. You know the way I'm talking about.
I had no idea you felt that way. Cat? Here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
Intervention begins with Peter still connected with the strange symbiote from earlier. However, we're starting to see the way that it actually has changed him. The episode begins with Peter's Aunt May suffering from a mild heart attack, causing him to become extremely angsty, as now he will have to pay even more bills considering the cost for the hospital visit. Frustrated, Peter goes to the only place he knows he can for sure to acquire some cash: Tombstone. In order to work with Tombstone, however, he must agree to not fight crime for a week, letting Tombstone and his goons run rampant.
Peter! How are you?
How's your aunt?
Oh, Petey, I was so worried about you.
Wait, you all know?
Later in the episode, as Peter gets extremely frustrated for very minor things again, he realizes that his mood lately has been a little off. He takes some alone time to realize that he's having bad, nasty thoughts that he's never really had before, and he realizes that it must be the symbiote. He then attempts to hurt the symbiote, however it tells him that it's already too far connected, which worries Peter.
We will not allow.
Eventually, Peter has a nervous breakdown of sorts, and he has a vision of him realizing that the guy he let get away was the one who shot his Uncle Ben, and left him to take care of Aunt May alone. Peter catches the guy and ends up dangling him from the side of a building, being told by his symbiote that killing that man will be the only way of solving his long-term frustration. Let it be known that it's also here where we hear his uncle utter the iconic phrase, "With great power comes great responsibility." All of a sudden, his Uncle Ben's apparent spirit shows up and helps Peter get through his negative thoughts. Eventually, Peter is able to break free for a moment, bang the bells to weaken the symbiote, and then yanks it off of him, successfully putting it in a bucket.
Sorry, Simby. I know this must hurt, but we're just no good together. Consider yourself dumped.
Peter, as Spider-Man, then takes the symbiote to Dr. Connor's lab, where Eddie is at first excited that the symbiote has been returned so that he can continue his important research. However, right in front of his face, Spider-Man presumably destroys it. Eddie, swearing vengeance on the name of science, is extremely distraught and alone, leaving the small remaining symbiote to seep into him and tell him everything he needs to know about who Spider-Man is and how he can defeat him, creating the iconic Venom.
We will have our desire! Yes! We will have vengeance on Spider-Man!
Nature versus nurture starts off exactly where we left off, with Venom taking advantage of Tombstone's newfound job opening, as when Peter regained his humanity, he quit. Later, Peter is given a warning by MJ when she tells him that he asked her out only to upset Peter. Peter doesn't quite know what to do with that information and insists that he and Eddie are still bros.
I can't. I'm sorry. If the doc gives me the okay, I'll be bringing Aunt May home.
That's okay.
Oh, are you going back today? Because I'll go with you to the hospital.
An incredibly long fight sequence then occurs that eventually becomes public after Venom tried going after his Aunt May. Eventually, Peter lures the symbiote back into his body, presumably claiming it as his own. However, once inside the symbiote, he realizes that it was all a trap all along, and Peter inevitably is able to defeat him again using the same tactics that he used before: the power of love and family. To dispose of the black gunk thoroughly this time, he decides to submerge it in cement, leaving him stuck forever, making that 2 villains he's now been able to trap using cement.
Wait! No! You can't do this!
Don't leave me.
The episode ends with several different large revelations, one being that Peter's deciding to stay Spider-Man forever as he dumps the serum that would have reduced his capabilities. The second is that Peter realizes that he's in love with Gwen after the two finally kiss.
We know who you love the most.
Season 2 launches with even more familiar faces, including one that I believe most of you will recognize from the newest Spider-Man series. He goes by the name Mysterio. The first episode starts with Peter having a nightmare about his encounter with Venom and wondering where Eddie must have run off to. A little while later, we're introduced to the Fishbowl Magician himself as he evades Spider-Man due to him throwing a pedestrian off of a bridge. Eventually, we're met again with Mysterio. But this time, Spider-Man is able to see that he's actually using little robots rather than magic to harm and scare his victims. A battle breaks out, and Spider-Man is eventually able to figure out who Mysterio actually is. However, he doesn't actually remember the man at all. Reinforcement brings old villains together, successfully forming the Sinister Six. It begins with Kraven the Hunter, who, don't worry, is actually what he sounds like, an evil hunter guy who's trying to hunt Spidey. Anyway, Kraven smashes into what appears to be a support group, urging Doc Ock to come with him. However, he refuses, as he doesn't want to be evil. Instead, Electro takes up the offer, leaving a shocked Doc Ock behind.
Please, Max, you don't have to...
I told you, it's Electro.
Kraven takes Electro to his boss, which is where they meet up with other villains we've met throughout the series, such as Sandman, Mysterio, Vulture, and Rhino. They eventually group up to attack Spider-Man, however, most of their fighting takes place individually. After the fights, Spider-Man becomes aware of all the technology that was stolen from Oscorp and begins questioning where it is all going, only left with mysterious riddles about master plans and future problems.
A bug for a bug.
Yeah, I got that. For you, that was clever.
Thanks.
The episode ends with us witnessing Doc Ock's old arms crawling into his support space and taking him away to the roof. We find that the growing pains mentioned in this later episode's title are shown through the growth of the Colonel after his return to Earth from his space shuttle. Apparently, little spores from the alien life form had seeped into his skin and started multiplying and making him grow over time. He sometimes goes through growth outspurts that result in destruction and anger. In order to control his growth, they gave him a suit designed specifically for him.
The spores are chemically altering your mass, making you heavier, stronger. This, Jupiter suit will slow you down.
A little later, we're shown a scene of Spider-Man somehow running into our old formidable foe, Venom. They have a brief fight, but it's not long before the Colonel shows up in his new and improved outfit, attempting to save lives of his own using his newfound powers. Shortly after this, the police arrive and Spider-Man attempts to leave. However, the Colonel isn't quite sure that Spider-Man wasn't the one who caused all the fires, since he and Venom share a suit. Spider-Man gets upset at this, as obviously he didn't stop for a change of clothes in the middle of battle. When he attempts to leave the situation, the Colonel actually decides to go after him. With not much luck, in the shadows you can briefly see Venom plotting as the Colonel births newfound hatred towards Spider-Man. Later, the Colonel decides to attack Spider-Man unprovoked.
Spider-Man's mine, and I'm gonna stop him permanently.
But he's no match for Spider-Man and 2 million volts of electricity. Eventually, the scientist back at Dr. Connor's lab is able to solve the spore problem and get them out of Colonel's body, which theoretically should be a momentous occasion. Unfortunately for the Colonel's dad, it means him becoming a little insane as he continuously mutters, "I want the power back." The episode ends with Peter at his job at the Daily Bugle getting yelled at by his boss as his son was the Colonel, and he absolutely hates Spider-Man and blames him for what happened to him. All of a sudden, during the commotion, Venom leaps through the window and yells out Spider-Man's secret identity. This episode follows right after the events of the last, with Peter Parker turning into a massive scandal. Even the Daily Bugle is against him. Shocker, I know.
You were one of the first individuals rescued by the Spider-Man, and Peter Parker is a friend of your son's. Any chance Pete and Spidey are one and the same?
Before the paper can come out, Eddie is spotted yet again at the lab trying to hit on Gwen. Peter prevents this, but not without getting a threat from Eddie before he heads out. Soon after he leaves with Gwen, he's stopped by reporters. His secret is clearly out, and he must confess to Gwen about his true identity. Later that night, Eddie catches up with Spider-Man and Venom, and a heated fight ensues.
And we can't wait to watch them all turn against you.
Venom reveals to the public that he wants to take off Spider-Man's mask to unveil him to the world. After he's unsuccessful, Eddie's shown stealing some of the anti-Spider venom from the lab, presumably planning to use it on Spider-Man in order to take away his superhuman abilities, and potentially gravely wound Peter Parker, as he will no longer be able to adequately defend himself against his enemies. A long battle takes place, with Venom trying to force-feed the liquid to Peter. However, he is, as per usual, unsuccessful.
This is gold!
Spider-Man is able to steal the liquid and shove it down Eddie's throat instead, leaving the core of Venom to flee into the sewers. Eddie afterwards is extremely distraught, as just like most people after having Venom take over their bodies, is seen being taken away on a stretcher. The episode ends with Flash, the popular guy at school, claiming to be the real Spider-Man, getting most people off of Peter's back.
Hey, did I mention I received a personal thank you from Spidey himself?
You mean Pete?
Yeah, no!
Meanwhile, Dr. Connor's lab is being taken over by someone else with higher security since their equipment and serums keep getting stolen. Oh, and Peter's given a firm reminder that the day his true identity is actually revealed is the day that he puts all of his loved ones in grave danger. This later episode begins with Liz confessing to Peter that she's currently worried about her little brother Mark, as he seems to be suffering from a gambling addiction. The show then cuts to Mark's perspective of him begging what seems to be a gambling leader. He's pleading that he doesn't have the money he owes. However, he'll give it up as soon as he gets his hands on some. When all of a sudden, the Green Goblin arrives and is shown whispering something into the gambling leader's ear.
Wrong answer!
The leader then forces Mark into a makeshift lab, telling him that in order to pay off his debt, all he has to do is go under a simple procedure. Norman is shown at the scene, further enforcing our previous knowledge that he's in fact Green Goblin, and that he's perfectly aware of what his goblin juice does, as Harry already has his own incident with it.
Alright, Marky, shut off.
Are you sure he's a real doctor? This place doesn't look sanitary.
After the procedure is complete, they offer him an extra 100 since he was successful in the change, and he uses this money to go off to gamble yet again at a derby. However, when he doesn't win, he gets incredibly angry, and he turns into a fiery monster. Behind the scenes, it's clear that it wasn't so much his anger, but rather the Green Goblin pulling the strings.
Go away! Go away!
No can do, buddy.
Is it gone?
It's then revealed that the reason Mark is going after Spider-Man later on in the episode is because the Green Goblin orders him to do so. However, Spider-Man just so happens to be near Liz and MJ, both whom know Mark personally and are confused by his actions. Liz is especially upset because she knows that the only reason Mark got himself into these messes is because of his gambling addiction.
You're a gambling man. Would you bet on duration or frustration?
He's inevitably unable to stop Spider-Man, and is taken away by the police shortly after the battle. The episode ends with Dr. Connors learning that the man who took over his lab was responsible for Mark's transformation, and he insists that he tells the board of the reckless behavior. Unfortunately for him, he's blackmailed into submission with the thought of anyone finding out that he was the Gator, and that he too used his lab for selfish, strange purposes. The last episode starts off with Gwen and Harry calling Peter over to Gwen's house, where Harry confesses to them both that he thinks he may be the Green Goblin. He then tells them things in which Peter already knows as well. Peter was there as Spider-Man.
I don't remember any of it, but my dad and Spider-Man figured out my green-fueled subconscious was taking over.
After this meeting, Peter and Gwen realize that they want to be together instead of their respective partners. However, Harry overhears this and becomes extremely upset, as Peter and Gwen are his best friends, and he can't believe that they're doing this to him.
If you don't feel the same way...
Peter, I've been in love with you since 7th grade.
The show then cuts to Spider-Man arriving at Harry's penthouse, there to find out once and for all who the real Green Goblin is, accusing both Harry and Norman. After a talk with Norman, not long after Spider-Man is standing on the outside balcony, when all of a sudden, the entire thing just explodes. He's then attacked by the Green Goblin and a battle ensues.
Although I will admit you have an annoying tendency to, well, survive.
Directly after this, Spider-Man swings back to the penthouse to find that Norman and Harry are still standing there, causing Harry and Peter to think that they have been set up. Norman makes a call and reveals that there's potentially one other man that could have access to the goblin juice other than himself. Cut to Spider-Man battling yet another goblin after finding out it wasn't the other businessman that Norman claimed it could have been. We're shown that Harry is flying in a helicopter with his father, however, and he soon realizes that the person with him cannot possibly be his father since he was heard apologizing to Spider-Man the day prior. He rips off his father's mask and finds that it's actually the Chameleon, meaning that the Green Goblin Spider-Man is fighting is really Norman. The episode ends with Spider-Man supposedly killing the Green Goblin right in front of Harry, causing Harry to begin his hatred for Spider-Man altogether, thinking that his father was a victim to the green juice such as himself. Little does he know that his father wasn't stupid and had found a way around the blackouts. The episode finally concludes with us learning that Norman, in fact, is not dead, but on a cruise ship taking a vacation. And that, my friends, wraps up the spectacular journey that we just went on. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Be sure to let us know what shows you want to see recapped in the future. Oh, and leave a comment on your favorite Spider-Man villain. We will see you next time. See ya!